because the message that I want to get across today is that we're all in a situation where we're being forced in some cases. In other cases, we have no choice because it's the right thing to do more with less, right? To simplify the environment we run, to simplify the environment that we operate, to simplify the technologies that we use, because we either have to because we don't have the money, or we don't have enough people to run the things that we have, or they just don't work, right? And I'm going to talk about it from the point of view of like how we think about it, right? So if you really look at Palo Alto Networks and you think, you know, what are you as a vendor, provider of security technology, someone who's solving complicated problems in the largest accounts globally, all the way down to the smallest accounts globally and everything in between? How do you think about the problem that we all have? And I'm going to think about it from the point of view of the defender, the people whose job it is to prevent bad things from happening, right? And so we think about it from the point of view of like the problem we're solving, and I think everyone's pretty comfortable nowadays with the problems we're solving because cloud is absolutely the future, right? It's already the present, probably even the past from some companies that have been very progressive and they've been moving to cloud aggressively. But I don't think anyone will argue that it is not the future. It is. The definition of it, of course, is something that we'll leave up to other vendors and people who are doing a great job there. Work itself has changed. COVID forced things to happen in security that people always said was impossible. We can't have everybody working from home. There's no way. We can't let people use their own devices. We can't give them access to the important information they need to do their jobs. COVID happened and we had no choice but to do it. And guess what? We mostly did it, right? Yeah, there was bad things, but there was bad things before and there's bad things after, but we mostly figured it out, right? And then the attack landscape, the threat landscape, the way attackers work, they're just always going to be one step ahead, right? They're pushing the envelope. They're doing things to break the rules. They're always trying to find new creative ways to, you know, to do whatever it is they do, whether it's getting the data or causing some sort of disruption or whatever their purpose is. But there's also a lot more funding in the attack space. There's nation states. There's, you know, commercial corporations that run businesses around attacking. So we, the vendors, the people whose job it is to provide products to help you, the defenders, actually stop bad things from happening is getting harder and harder and harder, right? So we have to think ahead about what it is that we're trying to do to help our customers. So problems, you know, you'll see every vendor does this, right? We put up slides with percentages of attacks and the dollar values of the attacks. The numbers will change, but the facts remain. Things are bad, right? I can list off 20 different examples of customers in Canada that have had significant breaches, whether it's ransomware or data leakage or internal incidents that have caused massive disruptions. And that's when the money shows up. Like we as defenders, sometimes we're stuck in a situation where we know we need to do things, we need to buy more things, we need to deploy more technology, we need to get more people on the team. And the answer is always no, because we don't have the funding for that. You're a cost center, we can't figure out how to make you pay for it. But then when there's a breach and the business is at risk and everyone's job's at risk, tons of money shows up, right? So how do we consolidate both the thinking, but then the solutions themselves? You'll hear buzzwords from me. I'll try to explain why we say these buzzwords. Transformation. Everybody's probably sick and tired of IT transformation. It's just a way to say that we're changing the way we're doing things, because doing things the old way doesn't work anymore. Or if it does, it kind of works, right? It's just a false sense of security. And in cyber, that's a bad place to be, right? If you can't manage your risk and you don't understand what the risks are and you think you're okay, but you're really not, it's bad, right? So we all have to think about what are we doing now that doesn't work or we don't think it works, and what do we need to change to do better, right? And the only thing that matters is stopping bad things from happening. It's not about deploying new technology. Nobody cares if you have a new dashboard. Nobody cares, you know, if the network is a little bit faster. They just care, can I get my job done? Is my business effective? Am I able to compete? And are bad things not happening to me, right? That's it. So the way I look at it, coming from the vendor side, working with the defenders, the customers, the clients, the people, partners that we work with to solve problems, if we don't stop the security issues from happening, I might sell things a few times and then I'm out of business, right? Like we as a vendor will stop being relevant because people won't buy the technology, they won't deploy the solutions, they won't use it. So we have to stay ahead of that. When we talk about transformation, if I distill it down to 3 things, just to keep it simple, because transformation means many different things to different people, but if we just talk about thinking about the cybersecurity challenge and how we're transforming our way of approaching it, it's really 3 ways of looking at it. 1, you need to manage the cyber risks in the environment that's changed, right? Whether it's you're deploying remote access, you're going on a SASE model, you're going to cloud, you've got, physical locations you need to protect because that's the business you're in oil and gas, infrastructure, whatever. Understand what it is there that you're protecting and what the risks are. That's very important. If you don't know what you're protecting, how do you know what you're doing actually works, right? How do you actually know if you're really doing the job you're supposed to be doing, which is defending the environment and the business that you're defending? 2, do better, maximize security efficacy. So we've been doing things the same way for a long time. Every once in a while, something significant happens and everyone's forced to change, right? I was part of the original change on the wrong side when I was at Juniper, and I was in the early days of next generation firewall and consolidation of security capabilities in a device. And we used to sell firewall, VPN, URL filtering, anti-spam, IDS, IPS. We sold all these products. It was great as a vendor. I sold a lot of things, but I wasn't solving the real problem, which was how do I make things easier? How do I do more with less? Next generation firewall, Palo Alto Networks was one of my competitors. They came along, but there's others. And they just changed the way we thought about the technology and the problems we were solving. We're doing that again, right? If you really stop and think about it, we're doing it at a different scale, probably a different context, but we're in the same position, which is consolidation and simplifying is very important. And that's how I'm going to get better security, right? And I'm going to get better operational efficiency because I just can't run all this stuff, right? And then take advantage of innovation, right? There's too much, right? Humans can't keep up. The attackers aren't. The attackers are automating. The attackers are using AI. The attackers are using tools. They're using services. They're building things in cloud. They're scaling. There's no way we as defenders can keep up if we don't do the same and also do more, right? So let's talk about this for a bit. Prevention. When we talk about defending Palo Alto Networks, we talk about it from the point of view of stopping it in the first place. It's not about like great logs that gives you visibility so that when you finally get breached, you can find out what happened. That's important. You need that. But isn't it better to stop it in the first place? That's the ultimate goal, is prevention. And when we talk about prevention, it's hard, right? There's an old example, but I mean, a million of the examples nowadays will be the same. Something bad happens, and in not too long, everyone is affected, right? Why? Because it's all automated, and it changes, and the tools that we've used forever don't work anymore, or they don't work as well as they used to. They can't keep up. So how do we solve this problem, right? The other problem is there's too much stuff, right? Like new devices, we're putting in new, really dealing with new attacks. We're changing the environments. Like you can't ask your teams to just forever keep up. They're burning out. Like if you work on the security team, you're probably very tired, right? Especially if you're good at what you do, because then you're the one usually doing all the work. So, we're looking at this as the problem. People and tools, yes, they're part of the solution, but they're not the solution anymore, right? So if we dig into this a little bit, the environment. This is typically how our customers see security. They see it as product categories, right? They see it as like, oh, I'm working on, a firewall project, or I'm looking at my DNS security profile, or in cloud, I'm looking at a CSPM solution or something like that, which is fine. It's a way for you to compartmentalize the thinking around the products and the technologies and the problems you're solving. But it does this. Over time, you do this, right? And no one does this on purpose because no one's, a psychopath, right? You get here because good products, I'm solving a particular problem. The year that I did my project, that was the really good product, or evaluations, or different buying groups, right? It happens. This is what happens over time. And sometimes the only solution for some of these categories is to buy the niche vendor because it's something that's so new and the rate of change and the innovation is going so quickly, you have no choice but to say, wow, this product solves the problem that no one else is solving. I'm going to buy this thing. Great. But the problem with this is, of course, it becomes untenable after a period of time because you now have to manage, just from a procurement point of view and from a vendor management point of view, it's a nightmare, right? Multiple MSAs, you have to negotiate, you have different partners who sell it different ways. Some are selling it through marketplaces, others want traditional invoices and POs. Like it just becomes hard to even just manage it from a vendor perspective. But realistically, my point of view is, forget that. What about security? Are you getting really, truly the value out of the investments from protecting yourself? Maybe. It's questionable. What this does is it makes you, the defender, the integrator. You have to make everything work. It's your job to figure out how do these pieces solve the problem in a way that they talk to each other, They share information. Logs go somewhere so that I can mine the logs and figure something out. Maybe I'm using a tool that's going to help me with AI or something, and I got to get logs over there, which means I need an expensive SIM, but that SIM doesn't have support for all the products. Like, it just, your mind wants, your mind is going to explode if you have to really deal with this top down. But this is what we have, right? And this is the best we could do over time. But it's time for us to take a step back and start thinking hard about, like, is this really working anymore? And is there an option? What is our option, right? Simplifying is obviously one of the ways to do it. When you talk to executives, we do, right? I have over, our company has over 80,000 customers globally. Banks, governments, all the way down to small little one-off offices and things. So we see the whole spectrum. And you'll see different numbers depending on what scale and scope of customer we talk to. But there's, the common answer for most of the questions that we ask around how many tools do you have and how do you manage it and how do you find, the security capabilities, it's always not great, right? No one says, I love all my tools. I love the fact that my teams are all programming Python scripts to connect everything together. That's just awesome. Nobody says that, right? It's a necessity. Some are good at it, but it's fragile, right? One code upgrade to one of the main products breaks everything, and all of a sudden you're back to scrambling to get security. Nobody wants to be there, right? But it's hard. This is hard. What we do is hard. It's not easy. So too many vendors, too many tools, too many alerts, too much manual labor. This is the kind of conversation that happens all the way up to the top levels of either cybersecurity-focused leadership at our customers, the board in some cases. Why? Because the board's asking the question, why did we get breached? Why did my network shut down for 2 days and we were locked out? And usually the answer is human error, didn't have the right thing at the right time, you just missed the log, right? Forgot to configure something, or it was a directed target attack and none of the tools we had could have saved us, even if we were doing an amazing job. So why do we do this to ourselves, right? But there's no easy answer, because if I said, well, I'll just buy one company's products, like buy Palo Alto Networks, we'll solve all your problems. That's not realistic. The realistic thing is we're still stuck in a category-based technology buying cycle. We have to get away from that where we can, right? So simplifying, consolidating just the tools themselves where it's possible is absolutely critical. But you still need best of breed, because you can't give up quality, right? Because again, we're talking about security, we're talking about preventing, we're talking about protecting. And if you're like, this is good enough, then you're back to the same point that I made at the beginning, which is like, are you really secure? Kind of. Like, I don't know. Does that product really work? People are telling me it's not that good. So you have to have some sort of best of breed mindset when you talk about solving the technical problems. But you need to be doing it in a platform or consolidated way. And I'll explain what I mean by platform, because I think platform is one of those buzzwords like transformation that everyone's abusing. All vendors have platforms. We all use the word platform to describe what we do, because it's kind of a platform. But I want to talk about it from the conceptual perspective, and I'll get to that in a second. So part 2 of transformation. So, okay, you kind of wrap your head around the stuff you have and where it is and everything else, and what the risks are. Now you need to think about, like, am I doing a good job, right? And so zero trust is one of these concepts that everyone knows about, right? Again, zero trust. We all talk about it. Every vendor has a concept or a story or a definition. Every customer we have either has a zero trust product or an initiative, right, where they're transforming themselves to a zero trust security posture. And you'll get different definitions for what that means. Our definition is pretty simple. Get rid of implicit trust and continuously validate everything that's going on that has risk. Sounds easy? It's really hard to do, right? Because when you look at zero trust from like a traditional network security perspective or the typical architecture that you're solving for in most modern networks, you got users somewhere, you got your apps, your data somewhere, and then you have stuff in between, right? Your user, your application, the device, the data, and some sort of continuous security. You need to do this everywhere, right? You want to do zero trust? You can't do zero trust just remote access. That's not zero trust. That's just, implementing security in one particular part of your environment. Zero trust means zero trust, right? It means that the user doing something with data, which is ultimately the focus of IT, is secure no matter how you do it, no matter where you are. So if you're doing zero trust, you need to think about it holistically. So that means you need to do it everywhere that the user is relevant and everywhere that the data is relevant, right? And the functioning and the processing that happens with the data. That's why cloud is really cool, because it simplifies the middle part. The plumbing in the middle is a nightmare nowadays. Who runs a data center anymore? It's hard to find people who are building new data centers, right? Unless you're doing something super niche and unique, no one is on purpose building a data center, right? Everyone's trying to get rid of their data centers. They're like, please take this crap out of my hands, right? I'll change my apps. I'll rewrite my apps if I can put it in cloud and I can provide, you know, the business needs primarily. Number one priority is the business needs, and then can I do it securely? Here's the problem. This is why the whole having lots of vendors is a problem, right? Like just from a practical point of view, you want to do zero trust. You use the definition I described, which is applications and data and processing of that data, no matter where they are. How are you going to do that if you have all these vendors and products and technologies and ways of solving all these unique problems, right? You can if you're really, really, really good at integrating things, right? Even sometimes among the same vendor, even if that was all one vendor's products. Vendors buy products over time. We do it, right? And then we have to integrate it ourselves, but sometimes it's just, they're not. They're just like, here's a solution for product, you know, for problem X, here's a solution for problem Y. They don't really connect to each other. So, you know, hopefully you have a good SIM that collects logs and then you figure it out, right? It's not a good answer. It's not a good answer, but this makes it unrealistic to do zero trust holistically. You could do zero trust in remote access. You could do zero trust in some cloud applications. You could do zero trust maybe in a few of your physical locations because you could put physical devices in. But you can't really say my network is zero trust. So something like this where this middle piece, and we're going to say we have it, of course. I'm here to tell you that, you know, this is the way we think about it. Therefore, we're working very hard, investing a lot of research dollars, product, you know, development to do this. But this is the way we're thinking about it. And other vendors, I'm sure, you peel back the layers of that onion, they're going to be giving you similar concepts. And it's not because we're all trying to sell you on something. It's because smart people are thinking about this problem and they're like, we got to do this. Like, if we're going to seriously protect ourselves, if the mission statement is prevention, defense, you know, simplifying operations, there aren't a lot of ways we can do better without thinking about how we change things, right, significantly. There isn't a magic box you'll buy that'll fix your problem. There's a transformation required. And if you're serious about prevention, and remember I told you prevention is hard because it's all automated. It happens almost instantly. No one's going to run around turning off servers or disconnecting, you know, Wi-Fi access points to make sure that things don't propagate. It's just too late. So it has to be done in a way that is automatic and integrated across everything that is relevant to you, right? So platform. And then when I say platform, I said this before, platform is a marketing concept when it's about products from a company that, you know, work together. Great. But what I mean by platform is the architectural concept of platform, which is well defined. There's research on it. This is an example of a book that talks about it and goes into the definition of what platform means and uses lots of examples. Google Maps, for example, is a platform, right? Architectures like that. But there's some properties about platforms that you need to look at and think to yourself, okay, is this thing that we're saying is a platform really a platform? So platform's about information and interactions, right? And like a network, like, you know, what I just said was zero trust, information and interactions, right? For something to be a platform, there needs to be a network effect, which means the more the platform is used, the more value everyone gets out of it, right? More users means better outputs, right? In the early days of maps, it sucked. Big cities had it. Most of the time, you know, any new streets wouldn't show up, and it just wasn't good. But the more people used it, the more information was there to provide visibility and access to more places, the better it got for everyone, right? There's a feedback loop. Things have to come back. Like, the whole point of platform is that more people use it, more visibility is given, right? More opportunity to learn, and therefore make it better. So things come back into the platform for everyone who's using it, the network effect. So it's almost like a flywheel. The more people use a platform, the more value there is in it, which makes more people want to use it, which makes more value. And if it's successful, it'll just continue to scale. And then the really nice thing about platform is that's integration for you, right? The idea of platform is it's solving the problems across the whole scope of what the platform is relevant for. So that means when you extend it, everybody benefits, right? So if we talk about platform, it has to be network effect, there has to be a feedback loop, and it has to be extensible. Otherwise, it's really just products that are connected together through APIs. So what does this mean for the last perspective, right? We want to do better. Prevention is hard. Should be automated. Like, how am I going to do this, right? So I need to take advantage of technology, right? This is a famous quote. Everyone uses this when they talk about the potential of what big data gives for you. Google famously said this, Peter Norvig at Google, we don't have better algorithms, we have more data, right? AI is really cool. It's advancing very quickly, but the best parts of AI, meaning the stuff that's most understood, is well known to everybody. It's well researched, and everyone has the ability to deploy it. It really comes down to execution and data, right? So, you know, when we talk about AI, and this is another buzzword, right? I've mentioned a bunch of buzzwords. I've talked, you know, zero trust and transformation. I'm talking AI. But when we look at it from the point of view of us as a vendor, like how are we thinking about AI? Well, just generally speaking, AI is great, right? Why? Because it's innovation. It's just a new way of doing things that we've always known about. AI has been around forever, MIT, you know, in the 60s and 70s, but it's doable now. Like it's a real thing. We have the data, the compute, we have the network capabilities. We can actually leverage what the potential for AI is in a meaningful way and scale it down. It doesn't have to be just one super specialized supercomputer that's doing something. It's like your phone, right? Small devices, software sitting in cloud. So it empowers innovation, it enhances decision-making, right? It reimagines user experience, drives operational efficiency. Like if you think about the benefits of what AI can do across all different applications, it's generally those things. We're doing that. So when we think about how we're applying AI to our technologies and the problem of solving the cybersecurity challenge for defenders, we're thinking in terms of how does AI make our products better? How does AI make us understand things better? How can we give better user experiences and make more recommendations and take advantage of its ability to quickly react, right? How can we use it for, you know, doing things that we've never been able to do before, right? So Gen AI, so when you talk about like ChatGPT and all those technologies, they're really cool because it's like easy for the average user to understand. But there's a ton of capability behind that, right, that we can use for even something as simple as like how our support works. You know, you call into a company and you're like, I need support and here's my problem, and you kind of describe it without someone having to be trained for 6 months and really experienced, you know, after another 2 or 3 years to know the answer to the question. You can just have a large language model sitting behind it with like all the data available for all the problems that you know about and figure it out quickly. And then if that can't figure it out, then get a human involved, right? So there's all these things that AI can do. But if we talk about it from a security point of view, there's really 3 ways we think about actionable security outcomes that could be automated. One is signatures, which is not AI. That's just like encapsulating what we know as a problem. And signature is the definition, but there's different ways of encapsulating signature. But it's like, here's this thing that I compare to this other thing, and if they're the same, something bad happened, block it, right? Firewalls, it's a simple thing. IDS is a simple thing. On the endpoints, it's a simple thing. It's great. Why? Because it's fast. There's no processing, you know in advance. The reality is 80–90% of the malware and of the attacks that are in the wild are old. They've been around for a while. They're not 0 days. Like just implementing updates and patches and stuff will probably protect most of the risks that you have in your network. So signatures are great, but they're not enough. Why? Because with machine learning, which is the first real applicable use of AI technology, which is really math, right? It's just taking data, training the data, knowing what's good and bad, to get algorithms out of it so that you can then run those algorithms, right? And that's what machine learning has been doing for security for a few years now. It's not new, but it's getting better, right? And the more data we have, the better we can train the models, which means the more effective they become. So put that in your technology. What's really cool is what deep learning allows us to do, because machine learning allows us to use variants of known threats. So we know what's good, we know what's bad, we can train it, we can tell it, here's what's good, here's what's bad, figure it out, right? And maybe some variants of it. What deep learning does is it takes advantage of the neural network technology, so the idea of having it learn on its own, which needs tons of data. And it needs to figure out patterns, and it needs to do things over time. So this is hard to do, and it's hard to do at scale, and it's hard to do in a meaningful way. If you really want to take advantage of AI to its fullest potential, you need to be thinking about it from the point of view of like, what can I do around large language model and Gen AI and just generative AI, so like having it build things for you and do things for you, but also learning for you. And that's what deep learning gives you. So how do you use that in an architecture, in a zero trust model, or in something where there's lots of things in your network that's protecting lots of places? You need to do it in a platform format, what I described, right? Platform, capital P platform, meaning it has the network effect, it has a feedback loop, and it's extensible, right? So wherever you are, The visibility into the data that's meaningful that you can use from an AI perspective needs to get somewhere to be processed, right? That's why everyone's moving to cloud models or to some sort of centralized model or to a model where things are fully integrated. Why? Because that's the only way that you can get the full potential of visibility and actionable outcomes up in one place. Now that's possible to do by you integrating it yourselves. When I say you, I mean the end user, whether it's the customer buying products and building it themselves, or it's companies working together, which is possible and happens, right? Or it has to happen from a small number of vendors who are really, really investing in it. And this is what we're doing. We're spending a lot of time and energy and research dollars. We spend about $1 billion a year in R&D for this kind of stuff, right? Why? Because if we don't, we're not going to be relevant in 5 years. That's the reality. That's the rate of change and the pace of change that's happening in our industry. Numbers are there. This is today. This is what we're seeing already, right? Using the capabilities that we're building, the scale that we have. You know, we get petabytes and petabytes of data per year, right? Why? Because we have over 80,000 customers, all part of the platform, right? Feeding back into it and then getting the actionable outcomes, right? The knowledge that's shared from one place to another. And so we see things that no human can handle, right? You know, 280 million new URLs analyzed. Like, you're not going to have, you know, 280 people going to 1 million URLs and manually looking at them and thinking, what is this? And is this secure or not, right? And then the old static analysis days where you could just kind of run it and see it and identify it using signatures, yeah, it kind of works, but not really. You need to do stuff that analyzes the data, looks at the behaviors, thinks about what it's trying to do, and then decides, is this a good, bad thing, right? So that's one example. DNS is another. You know, you can, threat prevention, all these things, right? The outcome. So what are we trying to do here? Well, we're trying to get life to be simpler for the person whose job it is to manage this. We're also trying to make it, you know, more realistic that the risks are being managed in a way that allows you to focus on the real problems. You know, this is from our SOC. This data is from our SOC. And, you know, we're a target, right? Large security vendor. Wouldn't that be an amazing trophy for a hacker group, right? To say that they took down one of the biggest security vendors, right? So we are very careful about how we protect ourselves, and we have a very progressive, innovative SOC and security team, but it's small. We don't have 200 people. We have 16 people, right? Protecting 20,000 people globally. And so, you know, this is what we see. 36 billion events, right, in a day. Now, vendors like to throw big numbers like 36 billion events. Maybe 35 billion were like one attack that just repetitively kept hitting, you know, the device creating logs, but it's still a log. It's still sitting in a hard drive that someone has to look at or something has to process. That gets processed down to actually 11 million alerts. So there's 11 million things that someone needs to worry about, right? Who's going to worry about 11 million things? Nobody. That gets then brought down after grouping, exclusions, deduping. So all the common stuff, we get down to 133 alerts. Okay, that's usually where most of our customers stop, right? Because that's what their SIM will do for them, or that's kind of how they've set it up, or they don't have enough people to go and do any deeper analysis. So they have 133 alerts, and then they hope that 10 or 20 or 30 that they get to are the ones that they should worry about, and the rest of them just kind of overflow, right? Just because you don't have enough people. If you can do some sort of automated analysis, you bring tools in, or maybe you just have the capabilities to kind of get those alerts down, you know, we'll get it down to 14, you know, fully auto, meaning we're using the technology, the advantage, the capabilities that we have to kind of really truly understand the nature of the events and decide, well, 14 of these are really important. And then from that, we can actually create 7 incidents, because we'll look at it going like, okay, 14 is manageable. Humans can look at that. Of that, 7 of them are like, wow, we got to really look into this thing. And then we deal with it. And, you know, so far, I'm probably cursing it, we've had zero major incidents, right? And so we want to get mean time to detect, mean time to respond. Those are the 2 big metrics that are used in our industry, because we all just expect we're going to get breached. So, you know, hey, if you're going to get breached, find out as quickly as possible. Average dwell time keeps going up. It's not going down, right? Average dwell time. So everyone knows what that is, right? So the time it takes for you to identify that you've been breached, because maybe it hasn't been a destructive event. They've just been sitting in your network, exfiltrating data, maybe making changes. So the longer that goes, the worse it is when you finally find out, because what do you trust? Nothing, right? And how do you know what happened? It's probably way too late now because logs and events that happened in the initial breach are gone. So finding out as quickly as possible if and when a breach happens is critical, and you need to have the capabilities to detect it quickly. But wouldn't it be nice if it didn't happen in the first place, right? So prevention should be the goal as much as possible, and then the inevitable event should be detected as quickly as possible. And then responding, meaning an event happens, doesn't sit in a log or in a dashboard for 2 days, which we have lots of examples of, the Home Depot one, for example, right? Someone saw it in their security operations center that was outsourced. They got back to whoever was supposed to deal with it, and they didn't deal with it for 2 days because they were busy, probably in an inbox, right? And then, you know, you can't keep hiring people, and the good people are going to burn out. So you want to get the mundane work automated or completely removed, so you can take those really smart people and have them working on the hard problems, the 14 events, or evaluating the environment. Maybe put them on a red team, see if they can get in, right? Or, you know, whatever it is that's going to provide you with a better security posture. That's the ultimate goal, right? That's what we want as vendors. You know, our job's not to get rid of people. Like sometimes I think one of the concerns about AI and automation and simplifying is I'm the firewall guy. My job is to manage the firewalls. You can't take this away from me. Or my job is to look at signatures. I actually had this at a bank not too long ago where they said, we don't deploy signatures into our IDS unless every single signature update has been evaluated by somebody. And I'm like, okay, good luck with that, because we send out like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 every minute because they're variants and they're just changes. Who's looking at that? Nobody, right? You just got to trust the system and keep getting better if problems happen. So we obviously, this is my little last at the end kind of perspective of Palo Alto Networks. Why am I here talking about this? Well, we're trying to solve these problems the way we can. You know, if you were to ask Palo Alto Networks people, like, how do you solve these problems? What is it that you're doing? So we try to focus our energy around the 3 areas where platform makes sense. There's no one platform that's going to do everything for everybody all the time. Anyone who tells you that is selling you something, a vendor. But there's very specific ways that platform is being applied in the areas where you're probably trying to solve problems. So your network and the way you're transforming your network, the way people get to work. Work's a thing now. Work is a thing you do, not a place, right? So changing the way you think about it. Cloud, there's very, very unique problems that are unique to cloud that need to be solved for cloud, right? So you've heard, for example, conversations about how cloud is doing really amazing things and transforming the way we solve IT problems that we never could before, but it also creates unique issues that they have to solve for cloud. So we are looking at that. And then security operations. So what I showed you with this doesn't happen just by you know, looking at 50,000 logs or dashboards or having one unique product that, you know, creates a nice consolidated view. SIM, I'm going to say something controversial because this is what we're thinking. SIM is going to transform, if not disappear, right? The idea of a SIM, right? And so, like, the concept of collecting logs and doing stuff with logs, that's not going away, right? So, like, and whenever I say SIM is going to disappear, everyone's like, well, what's going to happen to logs? No, we're going to collect logs still. But the way we collect logs and the way they are processed and the value you get out of them is changing. It already is. So, for example, things are sitting in cloud. People are building data lakes, right? Vendors are creating their own pools of data and then providing value back. You have to ask the question, how much data do you have? And how valuable is that across my whole security problem? Because if your data lake is small because you only solve a specific problem for one particular niche area, cool. But I'd rather have data across everything so that if someone, you know, on a laptop somewhere has a problem, my cloud environment and my network environment gets updated with the knowledge that I've obtained because I saw something somewhere else. That's not possible unless you integrate it, right? It's possible if you integrate it, if you do it yourself, write some Python scripts, or the vendor takes that responsibility on and then you hold them accountable for delivering on that mandate. So yeah, more of this, less of the other stuff, right? Now, of course, buy our product will solve all your problems is the way, you know, we'd love for you to think about it. It's not true. It's a process. You get there over time. You get there intentionally. Platform doesn't happen by mistake. Platform happens because it's hard work to get to platform, because you're taking stuff out and you're changing the way people do things so that you do it a different way. It's transformation. So let's simplify our lives, right? Let's try to do better. Let's do more with less. You know, challenge the vendors, hold us accountable. And yeah, let's do cool work. So that's my message. Thank you.
Questions, anyone? Des questions?
Awesome.
Well, I guess this sums it up.
They all want drinks. Let's go.
Yeah. Bar is open.